Hi, welcome to the Module 2 of Data Migration Framework course. I'm Krupesh Desai, your trainer for this course and the author of the book Data Migration Framework. In this training, we will learn about the third foundational component of the framework, that is, people and technology. We are now on the last foundational component of the data migration framework that you should address during the project discovery stage before a single piece of code is written for data migration. All three foundational components are intertwined, where the first two components of the framework focus on the scope, segments, and the regulations of the legacy data. The third component of the framework liaises with the stakeholders in identifying and mitigating risk coming from the resource availability and selection of technology for the data migration. Before we jump into the more details on third component, I want to clarify that these three foundational components are not mutually exclusive or sequential as such. You need right people mentioned in this component to find answers for the first two components. The combined set of questions from all three foundational components of the framework can set the scope of the discovery work to be conducted and summarized for stakeholders as the first deliverable of the decommissioning project. I propose this first deliverable to be the first version of the data migration plan, which stakeholders must endorse. If you are at the planning stage, leverage this framework and equip yourself with actionable information to allocate the proper funds and resources for successful data migration. Under the people and technology component of the framework, we will explore the challenges with people and possibilities with technology when migrating data from a legacy system. We will assess the availability of technical and business experts, look at tools available to execute data migration, and estimate the ability and capacity of your experts to work with a selected tool or work along with data engineers or developers tasked with the data migration development. Data migration is not just an IT project, it is a political battlefield. Business users care about operational continuity, compliance team care about regulations, and executive care about cost. If you don't align your stakeholders early, you will face conflicting priorities that delay decisions, last minute objections that derail timelines, finger pointing when things go wrong. Over several years of professional life, I observed and learned a few things about people leadership while being part of effective, average, and below average teams. I'm not the first one to realize that people, process, and technology are the three foundational components of any project, product, or service delivery. However, I feel that process and technology components have evolved over a century since we entered the industrial age, which is now entering the fourth industrial revolution. Meanwhile, the people part has been consistent forever and influenced the execution of processes and technology. That could be why people management lessons in the How to Win and Influence People by Dale Carnegie from 1936 is still relevant today as the bestseller uh, self-help book. In hindsight, I realized that decommissioning a legacy system is more of a people problem than a technology problem. When a business system runs over decades and manage code business transactions, various business units or departments in an enterprise could depend heavily on the legacy system with a few in-house system matter experts available. In my experience, I also came across people who have only worked on the legacy system in their entire career, spanning over 20 to 25 years. So, data migration is a subset of a more considerable enterprise-wide change that touches many people in the organization. And and I would say that you are really adorable if you think that everybody going to behave similarly with excitement and enthusiasm about this change. Not everyone is happy about the change, my friend. Some may want to drag the legacy system forever to justify their role at your organization. Therefore, do not assume or take for granted the availability and desirability of your in-house system matter experts to support the decommissioning effort actively. You may be lucky to have incredible human beings as your business and technology system matter experts. Still, they could be super occupied and busy with their business as usual and operational duties with limited or no spare time to support the decommissioning project team. Collaboration and input from the business experts are essential for forming business rules, mapping rules, and data cleansing approaches to execute robust data migration and ensure smooth business continuity post migration. They have answers for how a business system is used and historical changes been done. What workarounds and ad hoc processes have been implemented over the years in the legacy system? What downstream dependencies possess a significant risk for the business continuity? Any possibility for regulatory violation due to data migration activities, and many more nuances about the business impact of the legacy system. Even for the managed data migration services by the vendor, one would still need support from the in-house business and technical system matter experts, such as your super senior business or system analyst, legacy application administrators, DBAs, architects, IT leadership, and the data governance team to migrate legacy data accurately and securely. So let's look at the key resources or people you would need for your own data migration project. According to the data management body of knowledge, you would need varying degree of participation from various people with these roles or similar duties in your organization. You may not have everyone listed here for the best case scenario, but please list all the potential people in your organization with these roles or similar responsibilities and assess their availability for the data migration project. We briefly looked at what type of people we would need and what people challenges we could face in data migration. Now, let's look at the technology. If the target system is known for the decommissioning project or a few candidates are under evaluation, assess the level of support and resources available for data migration activities from the vendor of the system as well. In some cases, the vendor can provide complete data migration as a managed service, given that the raw source data is made available to them, which is also subject to compliance risk as covered in the previous chapter. In other instances, the vendor would provide a means or a way to load the data in the target system, which mainly include three options. Either you provide data in CSV or Excel files, or you populate a SQL database with existing table structures, or in some cases, you can push the legacy data directly into a target test product using REST APIs. Based on the available load method in the target system, choose the potential ETL tools and technology to execute data extraction and transformation of the legacy data into the data structure required by the load method of the target system. Whether you build a data migration development environment on premises or rent out infrastructure in any cloud operator, tools and technology will incur a cost. One can also choose to onboard specialized data migration software and consultant to manage services such as Hop or Bridgehead to minimize the risk coming from the decommission. The vendor of the target system could also recommend any specialized software for data migration that works best with their product. You can't miss the marketplace when it comes to data migration tools. Over the last decade, with the rise of cloud-native business application, marketplaces have emerged for major ERPs and CRMs, where you can buy add-on app that works in tandem with the target application. For example, Hop is already in the marketplace of Temenos, a leading digital banking solution. With the marketplace, major vendors have already built a community of services and solution providers around them. Therefore, look for what is already available and recommended by the vendor if you are deploying a multi-million-dollar system from a major vendor. In this training, I aim to showcase all technology options and avoid any silver bullet choice. Evaluate available tools as per your needs to find the best option. Going with the traditional ETL tools or manually entering data into the new system, that would be even a good choice in some circumstances where the legacy data is not complex or really tiny in size. So please evaluate your options and carefully choose the right tool for the project. Please note that the older the legacy system, the darker the fun of decommissioning. Data migration is a special event and not business as usual. They are short lived, one off, but inevitable. Apart from the deterioration of a system, mergers or acquisitions can also force legacy system decommission. This unique, one off, yet critical task need a special task force behind it with the right tool. Although you know what type of people you need and what kind of technologies are available in the market, resource planning for data migration will highly depend on the organizational culture and the data management maturity. Here is an example of data management maturity assessment. I've included the source from the awesome people from data strategy professionals who have compiled a great comparison and list of all possible and widely used data management maturity assessment. So I highly recommend that while choosing the right people and technology for your data migration, it will not harm to do a thorough data management maturity assessment. Please also note that you can do maturity assessment across the enterprise, or you can do it just for a particular business unit or department, or you can do it for a particular work area, such as you can assess your maturity just for the reporting or data warehousing or data integration. So you can really go precise on what you want to assess. And I highly recommend doing the maturity assessment to make right choices for your resource planning for data migration. Let me explain this in simple way in the next slide. With 5 as the lowest and 1 as the highest, with a higher data maturity that is 2 and above, and backed by well-established data management practices and well-documented business context, you can rely on your ETL tools and technical people to lead the data migration effort, where business experts participate as internal consultant with limited capacity. I take this way of doing data migration as the technology-led approach. With lower data maturity, that is 3 and below, with limited technical resources, I recommend bringing in specialized data migration software and external consultant to assist the business in leading the decommissioning project. And I call it as the business-led approach of data migration. In this approach, training business experts or the business SMEs on a data migration tool can eat up some time and funds, but it is a good investment for the long term as it will set a consistency for the language and tool across all stakeholders involved in the data migration. Data migration project with the lower maturity outcomes demand more time for discovery work in the source system. Data migration projects in organizations with the lower data management maturity demand more time for the discovery work in the source system, which has been subject to changes, ad hoc workarounds over the last 1 or 2 decades. The unknown nature of the source databases, poor data quality, and the orphan business processes are common symptoms of the lower data management maturity that requires significant effort for the discovery and reconciliation for data migration. In such cases, having your business expert take charge of the data migration with the external technical consultant with proven tools could be more fruitful than relying on two introvert developers working on a silo on some database ETL tool. Now, if you are an insider and an old rise at your organization, close your eyes, put your hand on the heart, and tell me, where do you identify your company from these five levels in terms of the data management? Are you champion, achiever, a player, mediocre, or the worst, the loser? In data migration for business applications, we do not simply migrate data, but transform it from one legacy structure to a new structure, and which includes dependencies and relationships that can introduce a lot of complexity and frustrations with the lower data management maturity level. After my first successful data migration, the very next project I worked on as a consultant, I got that project because the ETL developer left after creating a spaghetti of code for 2 or 3 years. And it was really difficult to decipher and understand that code. I also want to highlight one case study that I came across while writing my book. And thanks to Sune from Hop, who was working with a client in South Africa. And they had a similar problem. They had two developers, ETL developers, writing data migration code for 2, 3 years. And then they suddenly left, creating a code base, an unknown code base that no one can understand and decipher. So the business, a bank, decided to completely start the data migration effort from scratch after wasting money for 2 years. So be careful around how you approach this balance of resource and technology. And data management maturity assessment is one way to understand your own level and make some informed decision around whether you want to use ETL tools and internal people, or you want to bring on external consultant and a specialized software for data migration. Regardless of business-led or technology-led approach, as a program or project manager, you should also evaluate the need and the extent of capturing metadata generated by the data migration. This is covered in more detail in the next module, but I want to highlight here that metadata of data migration mainly includes the choices and decisions made on and about the legacy data, including the mapping rules, data cleansing rules, data transformation done to uplift the data quality, and many more. Smooth continuity of business operations is the primary measure of the success or failure of the data migration and the overall retirement project. However, decision support, or sometimes called as operational or business intelligence team, could refer to the metadata generated by the data migration for the next few years after the retirement of the legacy system, when they need to do some historical data aggregation. In a technology-led approach, database or ETL developers lead the data migration and liaise with the internal SMEs, technical and data teams, vendors, consultants, and project team. With this approach, remember the documentation. You must ask your developers to make sure you have all the documentation, as you may risk losing knowledge about codified business rules for data migration. And that is the metadata, what I mean by it. Enforcing a data migration plan and supporting documentation in a technology-led approach can ensure that the metadata generated by the data migration is captured and saved for the future references. On the other hand, in the business-led approach, whether data migration is managed service from the vendor of the target system or by a third-party consultant such as Hop, the data migration plan must be enforced here. However, the intensity of the related documentation will vary depending on automated data lineage and documentation features of the data migration solution. So now you are ready to kickstart the discovery work for your own data migration project. We have looked into all three foundational components that will guide you to conduct the discovery for the retirement of your legacy system and successfully migrate the data to a new system. For this particular component, here is the list of questions as we have looked in the previous two components as well. And these are the questions that you need to answer for your own project. Thank you so much for participating in this training. We have now covered all the foundational components. So please continue on the next video, which is the beginning of the module number 3, in which we're going to look the iteration components. Thank you.